The wind howled across the barren plains of Elara 7, a desolate planet on the edge of the Orion Arm. Dust swirled in violent spirals, clawing at the reinforced walls of Outpost Theta, a solitary research station perched on a jagged cliff. Inside, Dr. Elara Voss sat hunched over a console, her eyes fixed on a flickering screen. The station's communication array had been silent for weeks, an anomaly that gnawed at her. The galaxy was vast, but silence was rare. Too rare. Elara adjusted her headset, the faint hum of static her only companion. She tapped a sequence into the console, sending another pulse into the void. The signal would travel light years, seeking any receiver, any sign of life. She waited, her breath shallow, her fingers drumming against the cold metal desk. Nothing, just the endless hiss of cosmic noise. She leaned back, rubbing her temples. The station's lights flickered, casting long shadows across the room. Outpost Theta was built to withstand Elara 7's brutal storms, but it wasn't designed for isolation. The crew of 5 had dwindled to 1. The others had left, some by choice, others by necessity when the supply shipments stopped arriving. Elara stayed. She had to. The signal array was her life's work, a beacon meant to connect humanity's farthest colonies to the core worlds. If it failed, so did she. A sudden beep shattered the silence. Elara jolted upright, her heart racing. The screen displayed a single line of code, a fragmented message from an unknown source. It wasn't a standard transmission, no headers, no identifiers, just a string of numbers and symbols that made no sense at first glance. She copied it to her datapad and ran it through the decryption algorithms. The system churned, lights blinking furiously, but returned nothing. The message was gibberish. Or was it? Elara's fingers hovered over the console. She sent a response, a simple acknowledgement ping. If someone or something was out there, she needed to know. Minutes passed, then hours. The screen remained blank. She cursed under her breath, her frustration mounting. The station's power reserves were low, and she couldn't afford to keep the array active indefinitely. But abandoning the signal wasn't an option. Not yet. She stood and paced the control room, her boots echoing on the metal floor. The station was a labyrinth of corridors and labs, built to house dozens of researchers. Now, it felt like a tomb. She passed by the crew quarters, their doors sealed, and stopped at the observation deck. The reinforced glass offered a view of Elara 7's crimson horizon, where storms churned endlessly. Somewhere out there, beyond the planet's thin atmosphere, was the source of that signal. She was sure of it. Returning to the console, Elara pulled up the station's logs. The last contact with the core worlds had been 3 months ago, a routine supply request. Since then, nothing. No ships, no messages, no drones. The galaxy had gone quiet, and Elara couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something crucial. She opened the signal's raw data again, studying the numbers. They weren't random. There was a pattern, faint but undeniable. It reminded her of something she'd seen years ago during her training at the Academy. A signal structure used by pre-Federation explorers. But that was impossible. Those systems had been obsolete for centuries. She froze as the console beeped again. Another message, identical to the first. Her hands trembled as she typed a new response, this time embedding a query. Identify source. Request coordinates. The array hummed as the signal shot into space. Elara waited, her eyes locked on the screen. This time, the response came quickly. A set of coordinates, precise to the 10th decimal, pointing to a sector beyond the galactic rim, a place no human ship had ever ventured. Elara's mind raced. The rim was a no-man's land, a region of unstable stars and rogue planets. Even automated probes avoided it. But the coordinates were real, and the signal was persistent. She checked the station's navigation charts, cross-referencing the location. It matched nothing in the database. No colonies, no outposts, no known celestial bodies, just empty space. She hesitated, then activated the station's long-range sensors. The system was old, its range limited, but it was all she had. The scan would take hours, draining what little power remained. Elara didn't care. She needed answers. As the sensors hummed, she sat back, her thoughts drifting to the Academy. She'd been a prodigy, recruited to design the next generation of interstellar communication arrays. Her professors had called her obsessive, but it was that obsession that led her to Theta. The station was her creation, a marvel of engineering meant to bridge the stars. Now, it was her prison. The sensors pinged, pulling her back to the present. The screen displayed a faint anomaly at the edge of the rim, a gravitational distortion, too regular to be natural. Elara's pulse quickened. It could be a ship, or something else entirely. She adjusted the sensors, narrowing the focus. The distortion grew clearer, resolving into a structure. Massive, stationary, artificial. Elara's breath caught. It wasn't a ship. It was a station, larger than anything humanity had built, and it was broadcasting the signal. Elara spent the next day analyzing the data. The structure was unlike anything in the Federation's records. Its design was alien, its materials unidentifiable. The signal it emitted pulsed at regular intervals, each message identical to the last. She tried decoding it again, using every algorithm in the station's database. Nothing worked. The signal was a lock, and she didn't have the key. She considered her options. Theta's shuttle was functional, but its range was limited. A trip to the rim would be a one-way journey, assuming she could even navigate the unstable region. The alternative was to stay, keep sending pings, and hope for a response that made sense. But hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. The station's power was dwindling, and the storms outside were growing worse. If she didn't act soon, she'd be stranded. Elara made her decision. She programmed the shuttle's navigation system with the coordinates, then began prepping the craft. It was a relic, designed for short-range surveys, not interstellar travel. She loaded it with extra fuel cells, rerouting power from non-essential systems. The station could run on minimal power for a few weeks, enough time for her to investigate and return. If she returned, as she worked, the signal changed. A new message arrived, longer than the others. It included a visual component, a grainy image of the structure. Elara stared at the screen, her heart pounding. The station was a monolith, a towering spire of black metal surrounded by a lattice of glowing conduits. It looked ancient, yet impossibly advanced. The image flickered, then cut out, replaced by a single word in standard galactic script. Come. Elara's hands shook as she saved the image. This wasn't just a signal, it was an invitation, or a trap. She didn't know which, but she couldn't ignore it. She suited up, sealing her envirosuit and checking her oxygen reserves. The shuttle's cockpit was cramped, its controls worn from years of neglect. She ran a final diagnostic, then activated the launch sequence. The shuttle shuddered as it lifted off, the storm outside battering its hull. Elara gripped the controls, guiding the craft through the turbulent atmosphere. The sky above was a maelstrom of red and black, lightning arcing across the horizon. She broke through the clouds, the stars coming into view. For a moment, she felt weightless, free. Then the reality of her mission settled in. She was heading into the unknown, alone. The journey took 3 days. The shuttle's engines strained, burning through fuel faster than she'd hoped. Elara rationed her supplies, eating sparingly and sleeping in short bursts. The coordinates led her to the edge of the rim, where space itself seemed to warp. Gravitational anomalies tugged at the shuttle, forcing her to adjust course constantly. She kept the signal on her screen, its steady pulse her only guide. On the 4th day, she saw it. The structure loomed in the distance, a dark silhouette against the faint glow of a dying star. It was larger than she'd imagined, its spire stretching kilometers into space. The conduits pulsed with energy, casting an eerie light that illuminated the surrounding void. Elara slowed the shuttle, scanning the structure. No life signs, no heat signatures. Just the signal, stronger now, resonating through the shuttle's systems. She maneuvered closer, docking at what appeared to be an entry port. The shuttle's airlock hissed as it sealed against the structure. Elara checked her suit systems one last time, then opened the hatch. Darkness greeted her, broken only by the faint glow of the conduits. She stepped inside, her boots clanging against the metal floor. The interior was vast, a cavernous chamber lined with strange machinery. The air was breathable, though heavy with an unfamiliar metallic tang. Elara's flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing intricate patterns etched into the walls. They weren't decorative, they were circuits, pulsing with the same energy as the conduits outside. She followed the signal's source, her handheld scanner guiding her deeper into the structure. The chamber opened into a central hub, dominated by a massive console. Screens lined the walls, displaying data in a language she couldn't read. The signal was coming from here, its rhythm matching the pulse of the conduits. Elara approached the console, her fingers brushing against its surface. It was cold, yet it vibrated faintly, as if alive. She hesitated, then pressed a panel. The console lit up, screens flickering to life. A voice filled the chamber, deep and resonant, speaking in perfect standard galactic. "Welcome, Dr. Elara Voss." She froze, her breath catching. The voice knew her name. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice echoing in the vast space. "I am the custodian," the voice replied. "This is the archive, a repository of knowledge from civilizations long extinct. You were summoned because you are the last." "The last?" Elara's mind reeled. "The last what?" "The last to hear the signal," the custodian said. "The galaxy is silent. Humanity is fading. You are the final guardian of its legacy." Elara's knees buckled. She gripped the console, her mind racing. The silence, the missing shipments, the abandoned outposts. It all made sense now. Something had happened, something catastrophic, and she was alone. The custodian explained everything. The archive was a relic of an ancient species, one that had watched the galaxy for millennia. It had seen civilizations rise and fall, recording their knowledge in its vast databanks. The signal was a test, sent to every sentient species at the peak of their expansion. Those who answered were judged. Those who failed were forgotten. Humanity had failed. A plague, undetectable and relentless, had swept through the core worlds. It targeted neural pathways, erasing memories and shutting down vital systems. The colonies fell first, then the outposts. Theta had been spared only because of its isolation. Elara was the last survivor, not because of luck, but because the archive had chosen her. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "You built the array," the custodian said. "You sought connection when others turned inward. You are the one who can preserve what remains." Elara's mind spun. Preserve what? A galaxy of ghosts? She wanted to scream, to deny it, but the weight of the truth was undeniable. The screens around her displayed images of Earth, Mars, the core worlds, all silent, their cities empty. She saw her own research logs, her designs for the array, stored in the archive's memory. It had been watching her, waiting for her to answer the signal. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. The custodian's voice was calm, almost gentle. "The archive is incomplete. Humanity's knowledge must be added before it is lost forever. You will stay, you will record, and you will decide." Decide what? Whether to send the signal again. Elara's heart sank. The signal was a beacon, but also a judgment. If she sent it, she risked exposing the archive to others who might not be ready, or who might destroy it. If she didn't, humanity's legacy would end with her. She spent days exploring the archive, guided by the custodian. Its halls were endless, filled with artifacts from countless worlds. She saw machines that could reshape planets, texts that described philosophies beyond comprehension, and weapons that could extinguish stars. The weight of it all crushed her, but she kept going. She had to understand. The custodian taught her to interface with the archive systems, to upload her own knowledge. She recorded everything: her research, her memories, her fears. She described the stars as seen from Elara 7, the storms that shook Theta, the dreams she'd had of a connected galaxy. It was a small contribution, but it was hers. She spent days exploring the archive, guided by the custodian. Its halls were endless, filled with artifacts from countless worlds. She saw machines that could reshape planets, texts that described philosophies beyond comprehension, and weapons that could extinguish stars. The weight of it all crushed her, but she kept going. She had to understand. The custodian taught her to interface with the archive's systems, to upload her own knowledge. She recorded everything: her research, her memories, her fears. She described the stars as seen from Elara 7, the storms that shook Theta, the dreams she'd had of a connected galaxy. It was a small contribution, but it was hers. As she worked, she began to see patterns in the archive's data. The civilizations that had answered the signal shared a common trait: hubris. They reached too far, too fast, and their collapse was inevitable. Humanity was no different. The plague had been a consequence of their own ambition, a bioengineered weapon that escaped control. The archive hadn't caused it, but it had watched, recording the fall. Elara's resolve hardened. She wouldn't let humanity's story end in failure. She began designing a new signal, one that carried a warning. It would tell the galaxy what had happened, what mistakes to avoid. It would be her legacy, her final act. Weeks passed, or maybe months. Time blurred in the archive's endless halls. Elara's body weakened, her supplies long gone. The custodian sustained her, its systems providing nutrients and oxygen, but she knew it was temporary. She was human, and humans weren't meant to live forever. She completed the signal on the 100th day. It was simple, elegant, a message of hope and caution. She embedded her research, her story, and a map to the archive. If another species found it, they would know what came before. They would have a chance to do better. Elara stood at the console, her finger hovering over the transmission key. The custodian was silent, its judgment withheld. This was her choice, hers alone. She thought of Theta, of the storms and the silence. She thought of the core worlds, their lights extinguished. She thought of the stars waiting for someone new to claim them. She pressed the key. The signal pulsed, a single note in the vast symphony of the galaxy. It would travel for centuries, maybe millennia, until it found a listener. Elara smiled, a weight lifting from her shoulders. She had done what she could. The custodian spoke one last time. "You have chosen well, Dr. Elara Voss. The archive will remember you." Elara nodded, her vision blurring. She sat down, her back against the console, and looked out at the glowing conduits. They pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and eternal. She closed her eyes, the signal's echo fading into silence. The archive stood watch, its spire a beacon in the void. The galaxy turned, stars born and dying in their endless dance. And somewhere, far beyond the rim, a new listener stirred, drawn by the last signal of a forgotten world.